Welcome to Pax Europiana, the podcast about peace and prosperity in Europe, this time from Kosovo again, on my second day of my visit. This is the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Over there is ILEX. This is the EU Trade and Rule of Law Mission. Up there is the Faculty of Economy. And this is where the new opera building will be built of Kosovo. And that's over there. I will show you also. That's the place where the business registration agency is done. So it's one part, it's basically the southern part of Pristina. Over there is the hospital, just that you have the orientation. Again here the technical faculty and the so-called student village, and over there it's the sunny hill. You can see it's very sunny today and we are lucky here to have such a nice weather, and it's really very beautiful. I want to talk now about the injustice against the Kosovo Albanians, that there is a special court now, but that's mainly focused on the war crimes of the Albanians. There were maybe some, and certainly there was crimes committed on all sides, but it was a defensive action against the Serb aggression. And the Serbs were the ones with the heavy weapons, the Serbs were the ones with the state backing, and the Serbs and the Yugoslavian state was the instrument of suppression of all people here. And they wanted to ethnically cleanse and to commit genocide. And that must be understood. There is a little bit of a misunderstanding, a kind of a revisionist history happening from the people who were against the 99 intervention from the start. Like the friends of Yugoslavia in the European left, basically. And they want to somehow change the perception that we did something wrong and that was a mistake, the Albanians are terrorists, and all this kind of Vucic narrative. They try to portray that. And it's absolutely not fact-based. It's a fake narrative, and I reject it. And all good Europeans, all Europeans should be very clear. We did it. The intervention was a just and fair war against the war crimes of Milosevic, Serbia and Yugoslavia. It is not that all Serbs are being guilty. It's also not that all Austrians were Nazis. It is not all Germans were Nazis. Of course there is good Germans, good Austrians, but the state, the society in large, today still we carry a lot of responsibility for the crimes. And so does Serbia for the crimes of Milosevic. And they must repent, they must work on their past, do Vergangenheitsbewältigung, and not accuse the Albanians for making an uprising. And, all things, also in all wars, everybody who committed a war crime must be brought to justice. In Croatia, in Albania, in Kosovo, in Serbia, in Bosnia. That's the law. And this must be, of course, very clear. So it should be investigated, should be clarified, and should be made very, very clear, who personally committed atrocities or murder. Obviously, it must be brought to justice. And so I support the special court. But it should not deflect from the historic, moral, political, and criminal responsibility of the Serbian state for the crimes of genocide and ethnic expulsion, cleansing, and atrocities committed by the paramilitary troops sanctioned by the state and equipped by the state and funded by the state, by the Serbian state in 98 and 99, and the suppression before, the apartheid, the terrible crimes of beatings, of expulsion and of economic exclusion of the Kosovo Albanian population from 91 onwards, and 89 actually, when Milosevic basically declared war on the rest of Yugoslavia at the Kosovo Polje, and that is basically the fact. And we should not allow now to have this kind of fake Vucic, Serbia is the victim narrative, and that we start to apologize. I have made many tweets now about how active war criminals are living unpunished in Serbia. And they call in the television, in the morning shows, like Mr. Mladic. He is, of course, in Den Haag, but he's free to call in the morning television in Belgrade. Or Mr. Radoslasevic, who is doing all these activities, like getting honor patents from the gendarmerie for being an excellent commander Well, he is the commander of Rajak massacre. I mean, I cannot understand our policy. It's clear that Milosevic is a war criminal. It's clear that he committed these crimes in Croatia, in Bosnia, in Slovenia, in, of course, Kosovo, most of all. Yeah? The worst atrocities were happening in Bosnia. But there was, of course, especially because the Kosovo Albanians didn't have a lot of arms and they were in no way militarily organized in an effective manner. It only started in the very, like a small guerrilla uprising, yes. But they were not organized like the Yugoslavian People's Army, which even in '99 in June in Kumanova was more or less intact as a military force withdrawing from Kosovo. If we hadn't systematically destroyed the infrastructure of Serbia, there would have been much more victims, because this was a huge fighting force, the Yugoslavian army of '99, and they used it with all brutality against the people. They wanted the land without the people. Listen to my podcast, I explain it all very well. And so we have to understand that the individual guilt of anybody must be evaluated on the rule of on the courts, yeah. But that we do some kind of greenwashing of the Serb crimes via specifically having a special tribunal for the Albanians, it's utterly unjust and unfair. Even when it's now necessary to do it, I want to reject the underlying narrative of Borrell and of Lajčák and of others in the international community, who were as well all present, like me, in the '99 policy debate. Obviously, I was just in my end of 20s or beginning of my 30s, but Borrell was already a leading politician back then. And now, in power, in these important times, he is somehow withdrawing the support for the '99 military liberation of Kosovo retrospectively by his non-recognition and by appointing a non-recognizer. And that's utterly unacceptable, and should not think that we don't understand it. I very much do understand what's going on, and I reject it loud and clear. And that is so every decent person in Europe should be. If you are for Europe and you are not for the freedom of Kosovo and for the independence as a result of the rejection of genocide, yeah, then you are very much not really European, because you have not understood what Europe is. If you are not able to defend our values, ultimately also with the use of force, what the defense of values we have then, and what our values are worth? When we then are complicitly with genocidal ethnic expulsion and all these terrors which we have seen enough in the 20th century, and then we say, yes, you know, Yugoslavia was a good thing, yeah, maybe he didn't mean it so much, yeah, it was misunderstood. If you start to think like that, then you are not a European based on our European values, but you are a fascist or a Nazi or a communist or extreme socialist, authoritarian or whatever. It's possible. I cannot judge all of this, but individually, or nationalist, extreme one, but that's the thing. And I reject all this kind of equalitarian philosophy. Yes, both sides were to blame, also the Croatians, also the Kosovo Albanians. Yeah, they were not good citizens of communist Yugoslavia, and it was such a great project of anti-Americanism and socialist suppression and suppression of the minorities, and it could have been so nice if it would have worked, and so on and so on. Yeah? This is all utter nonsense. I mean, if you think like that, you are not based on the European value codex. You are not based on what Europe is about. You have not understood it. Yeah? And that is my message in this wonderful, beautiful morning here. And I would like to make it very clear that we should be implementing the law equal to all, but it doesn't mean that we give everybody the same value in terms of his deeds. Yeah? No. If you are in defense of your nation and of your country and of your people against authoritarian states, and then you have the right to defend yourself. Yeah? And that's what happened here in the case of the Kosovo Albanians, and we should be very clear on that one, and we should also treat accordingly. and obviously individual crimes must be always prosecuted, but collective guilt on the side of the Kosovo Albanians for what happened in the liberation struggle is not acceptable. And the collective guilt for the crimes of the Serbs, absolutely. Yeah? They have the same guilt like the Germans have it today, and the Austrians for what happened in the Nazi criminal terror regime times. And the Serbs have the different ideological basis. I understand that very well, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't matter if it's now a left-leaning, nationalistic, whatever historic narrative of this land is my land and all the people have to leave or get killed, or if it's the Holocaust. This is ultimately the same genocidal philosophy. The people have to get removed, or alternatively to get killed, because the land belongs to the Germans or to the Serbs, and so on. And this you need to reject if you are a European. And this we should all reject. So, I think I was very clear here, and I hope that we will have better policy in the future. As I say always, Pax Europiana is here, the podcast for peace and prosperity and for European unification. Please support this podcast, subscribe this message, and also share it widely, and make sure that we have a decent European Union where Kosovo and also one day Serbia, after it has repented this crime, is welcomed and a full member of our European family. It's also for Serbia is welcome. Same like Germany was allowed to join the EU and NATO, and also Austria should also join NATO, but is also in the EU now. And countries can improve, they can overcome their sins, and it's time for Serbia to overcome her sins and join the free world. Thanks a lot. All the best. Bye.